Here we go.
Do you want us to get a little away from you, or are you all right?
You're fine. All right, go ahead and start at the wall if you can. If you have a wall and you're able to go there, bring your body to the wall so that you can line up your load joints. Ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders. Feel the middle back come to the wall and your head as well. And just take a few breaths. I was able to do that. I don't think I can. Bring your hands to your rib cage and feel that east-west breath come into your body so that your whole body is expanding out to the sides. And release.
Yay!
Again, breathe in. And release. One more time. Breathe in. And release. With your feet pointed straight ahead, bring your hands just slightly away from your body and start your external rotation of your upper arm bone. Bring your hands back to the wall or back in space if you're not at a wall, and then back together. Open them up. Do that 10 times. As you move the arm bone like that, pay attention to the way that your arm bone is moving with your shoulder blade. And as you come in and out, the shoulder blade should have some rotation. And then once you get it back there, see if you can keep your shoulder blade on your back and just let your arm bone independently rotate from the shoulder blade. Now, take your left foot and put it in front of your right foot and bring your arms down by your sides. Square your hips as best you can. Put your weight one foot in front of the other. Yep, even out the weight between your feet, 50-50. Good. And then find your butt muscles and squeeze and release your butt muscles. Tighten, release.
Sorry for disturbing everyone, but after this.
We made it!
I came late, so everybody knew that some things could change.
Keep going, keep your balance. Squeeze, release.
Oh, I keep falling over. Yeah, we're no Simone Biles, are we?
We're supposed to grab these things at the front desk.
Okay.
You can clean your stuff.
Switch feet, right foot in front. Find your butt muscles, bring the weight to the inside of your big toes. Let your whole body have to stabilize like you're walking on a balance beam. That's going to change the way that your shoulder blades move, what's happening in your glutes. Maybe if you have a femur that's pointing in, it helps bring that femur around, takes some rotation out of your pelvis. That helps the way the shoulder blades glide. Squeeze and release. Squeeze your bum. There was a meme up there the other day on Instagram or Facebook that said Egoscue is, and there was like a Jenga set, and it was all pulled out all over the place, or the Jenga set was all pulled out, and then it said Egoscue is to your body like this, and it had a Jenga set all very put together. And I was like, oh, that's a cute little
That is cute.
idea of what is happening in your structure. Great. Both feet pointed straight ahead. Bring your hands to your temples. Fold your fingers in. Bring your arms up, elbows all the way together so they touch, and all the way back. 20 elbow curls. And then take a step forward and into arm circles. Hold your fingers to your palms, bring your arms by your sides, squeeze your shoulder blades right at the bottom of that shoulder blade toward your spine. Bring your arms up, keep that squeeze. Arms into shoulder blades towards spine. Circle forward, 40 circles holding that squeeze. Relax your belly. Let that little oscillation in your body force your hip flexors to start to turn on and stabilize your body in space. And then palms up, elbows super straight, squeeze those shoulders together, and just notice, do you have one arm that wants to keep staying bent, or is it difficult for a shoulder to squeeze around your rib cage? If you have a leg, even like mine, that's a little bow-legged on one side, that might affect the chain all the way up into the shoulder, and it might be more difficult to squeeze one shoulder blade toward your spine. Keep working on it. Really engage mid-trap, rhomboids. All those muscles, super strong elbows. And release. Good. Into neck. Just take it side to side. We'll work neck in a couple different ways today. Over to one side and over to the other. And then let's do a bit of nerve flossing. So you have nerves that run from the back of your head all the way down, all the way to the feet. And when you take your ear towards your shoulder, it's like sliding some of those nerves through straws. Inhale, come up, exhale over to the other side, bring it over. Think of them gliding through their space. Over to one side, over to the other. Now let's add the arms. So as you tilt your head to the left, curl your right arm in. That's just gonna help that nerve move. And over to the other side. In and up and over. And up and over. And up and over. Nice. Think of the nerves now that go down into your feet. As you look down, I want you to curl your right leg up. And then bring your head up, let your right leg come down. Bring your head down, right leg comes up. And up, the leg comes down. Good. Again, like you're bringing that nerve through a straw, shortening it on one side, lengthening it on the other. Couple more here. If the nerves have plenty of space, switch sides. So same thing, as the leg comes up, the head turns down. And as the head comes up, the leg goes down. Two more. Awesome. Let's bring it farther down into your body, into a windmill. Arms out to the side. You can choose to be at the wall or step a little bit away from it. You decide. Arms out to the side, over to one side. Coming up, letting your head move with your shoulders, shoulders with your rib cage, all the way over. It's early for some of this lateral flexion, so be gentle with your body. As we move, we're pushing some of that fluid that our discs swole up in the night so that our vertebrae, facets, and vertebrae can all sit just like they need to on a spine that has the proper curves. Take your feet wider. Same thing as you spread your legs out wide. If you have an elevated hip, that's a hip rotation, not just an elevation. You may know your hips will even out. If the TFL is part of what's engaging that hip up high, or the quadratus lumborum, dropping the hip, taking the feet wider will help drop a hip, even out of pelvis. 5 more. Wider 1 more time. Hug your feet to the midline. Same thing. Starting to let those adductors open just by bringing your legs apart. We're lengthening the adductors and shortening the abductors on the outside of your hip, and that changes how the muscles and fascia are talking all the way up into your back. Bring your legs back in, hip bone distance apart. Last ones, 5 more. All right, come down onto your hands and knees. So when you're doing a squat, part of what we're looking at is where your body has what we call a butt wink. So when you would go down into your squat, at some point your pelvis will tuck. Now sometimes that happens because your hips are set deeper and your thigh bone hits the top of your pelvis. That means your body probably can't go much farther, but we're gonna work on that, being able to contract the hip flexors and the lumbar erectors so that as you go down into your squat, you stay keeping that arch in your back. But we're gonna do that on our hands and knees. So I want you to come to your hands and knees. Feel how the front of your hip flexors and your lumbar erectors can stay engaged, and then push back. So this is like a quadruped rock. And just go right to the place where you feel like, yep, that's far enough. My pelvis and leg bones are starting to hit each other. And then come forward again. And just practice. So if you're someone where the glutes turn down too quickly, the glutes can stay tight. And when you keep the hip flexors and lumbar erectors engaged, then you're asking the glutes to lengthen as you go back. And then come back onto your hands and knees and slide back once again.
So am I firing my glutes?
Keep your tailbone lifted. That's what you should think of right now. Don't let them tuck down. Find the back muscles and the hip muscles, right till you get to the place where it wants to turn and then come back. Do that a few more times.
I can see you really putting a lot of arch, sticking your butt way up in the air.
Yeah.
So tell me, I want to be safe here, so
Yeah.
give me a little clues again. What am I supposed to be engaging to protect?
Your back muscles and your hip muscles. And then go ahead and come down onto your belly. Fold your hands under your forehead. And first, just take a few deep breaths. It's early once again, so letting your back move into that gentle extension, just feel with some full deep breaths how the vertebrae can settle into their rightful place, and the facet joints on the side can also settle. So feel the breath move in and out of your body, into your rib cage, out to the sides. And then we'll start to curl the legs up. Bring both legs up. And as you do that, if you just keep your low belly completely relaxed, it might put a little bit too much pressure on your low back. It may not. You have to decide for yourself. What happens when you pull on the muscles that cross the front of the legs, the hips and the knees, and decide for yourself, do you need a little more abdominal contraction to keep your back feeling healthy? Or can you do that and let your belly muscles just release? Keep them curled up there, and then let your heels drop away from each other and go into a wishbone. So we're going into that medial femur rotation. That's going to increase the arch in your back. And pull on some of those structures a little bit. So once again, if you did that, you dropped your legs out and you went, ooh, that was too tender on my low back, then maybe fire up your transverse abdominis a little bit and see if that feels better. If you did that and it felt fine to go into that much extension, then just breathe. Then bring your ankles back in so that they touch and drop them back out again. So we're getting femur-driven lumbar extension here, because as you push the legs out like that, turning the legs inward, it generally puts a little more of that arch in your back. And you can hold things pretty stable in your trunk right now and just let that rotation happen in the leg bone. So if the spring that's too tight is actually the rotators of your pelvis, then maybe adding a little bit of abdominal support lets more rotation happen in the hip itself. Keep your upper body completely relaxed. Let's do 10 more of those. And then widen your knees out, stretch your legs straight and tuck your toes under. And now find the muscles on the front side of your legs. So your quads all around your knees. You can just keep your forehead down on the floor, but I want you to bend your knees so that they touch the floor, and then straighten your legs so that you're firing up the muscles all around the front of the thigh and the knee. And you might feel different muscles wanting to engage between the right and left side. Obviously, we'd like them to be as even as possible. So just knees pressed to straight. Fire up the muscles of the front of the thighs. Feel, is your pelvis relatively even on the floor right now? Press, release.
Hard to do that without moving your pelvis move.
Yeah, well, your pelvis might move a little bit, but see if it can be pretty stable. Let's do 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good, those muscles should be good and turned on now. So now bring the knees wide and the bottom of your feet together, more of a frog. Sometimes, depending on how your hips are set, that could be kind of make your back flatten a little bit. That external rotation, it could make your back arch slightly. Really depends how your legs are set in your hip sockets. Either way, knees out, feet together. Press the bottom of your feet together and make it fire all the way up into your butt muscles. See if from that external rotation you can get your glutes to fire on both sides, and then release. And really let your shoulders relax.
Working on any leg bone rotation, if it's a medial femur or an external femur because the hips are tight, or because there's a pelvic disparity where one side of the pelvis is doing something differently than the other, and that's making the leg bone line up differently in the hip. Press, release. Let's do 20 more of those. Bottom of your feet, pressing. Some people have said to me that they feel it, not just in the glute, but actually in the hip itself. That would be something to pay attention to here. If you can get it to move, you may also try to engage your abdominals slightly and just notice what happens. How does that make it move between the leg bone and the hip socket? And bring your knees back in, release your legs, pigeon toe your feet, toes together, let your heels just drop out to the side, and let's bring your arms forward into that floor block position. Kathy, you still doing okay?
Wow, I was so tense.
Okay,
That I just decided that
go feet on the wall and just do,
every time you said relax the rest of your body, I still couldn't do it.
okay.
'Cause you,
So for you, onto your back, feet on the wall, do like knees out and in.
thank you.
Other people that have stenosis in their back or feel like their back is just wanting to be so tense could do that also. Feet on the wall, knees bent, drop your knees out and in. For the rest of us, arms up above your head, and just feel, how is it between the two sides of your body? Is it even between the right and left side? As you turn your arm bone outward, do you feel it in the same muscles around the right and left shoulder? I don't. I feel it different between the right shoulder and the left, and I'm hoping that that will even out a little bit as I stay here. So muscles on the side of your body, serratus and lat. You could even gently press your arms kind of down into the floor. You can really lengthen them forward, but mostly just breathe. Breathe and let your body find the correct muscles to move that arm bone into the right place. These differences could show up just because of years of using different muscles, having a rounded shoulder, having a pelvic disparity that affects the shoulder, or even a little tear in the shoulder itself. For all different reasons, you can have compensations happening. What we want to know is, if you stay here and ask the prime movers of that joint to do its job, does it eventually kick in? Do the compensating muscles relax? And the actual muscle that rotates that upper arm bone outward when it's in this position, does it start to work for us? Move your arms out to the corners of your mat. Do the same thing. Forehead resting on the floor, opening up those arm bones. And then straight out from your shoulders, same thing. Once again, as we get into these lower angles, is it easier for you to have a more balanced feeling between the right and left side? Bend your elbows so that your elbows are now more like the shape of cactus arms or a W, and then lift your left arm off the floor 10 times. Everything else stays stable, just lift and lower.
In this motion, should we feel our shoulder blade pinch toward our spine?
Yes. And then other side, lifting the whole arm and shoulder blade up onto your back. And then press up onto your hands and knees and put that all together in a cats and dogs. Round and arch. Feel how the shoulder blades can slide and sink all the way together. Now, maybe just make it a little more fluid, and just however you want to move, add some of that movement into your body. Wake up some of those muscles that run along the sides of your spine. Awesome, and then come to kneeling. So in this position, we're really shortening the lever. So we're directing what needs to happen with the low joints right up into this. And I want you to feel the pelvic bowl for a moment. So no problem, no problem. Feel the pelvic bowl and feel that you have muscles that are at the base of that pelvic floor that can contract and relax. So you can do things like pull your tailbone down toward your pubic bone. You can squeeze your sit bones towards each other. You can create muscles that go across that pelvic bowl and almost like lift them to the second floor. So that pelvic base is necessary for being able to really hold your pelvis in alignment. And sometimes we see one side of the pelvic floor based on the position of the pelvis not being able to be active. Pelvic floor therapists can figure out which ones are activating or not. But if you have a leg bone and a side of the pelvis that isn't being able to stabilize, that could also affect all the way up into the shoulder. Then one of the ways we can get that to work is just feeling it when we shorten these levers. Can you engage them? So go ahead and do that right now. It's very difficult because you're pulling on the 2 joint hip flexors to try to tuck your tailbone down, but that's what I'm going to ask you to do right now. So see if you can take your pelvis from like an anterior tilt and tuck your tailbone under, and see if you can go in towards a posterior tilt. And that's going to pull on these quad muscles, but basically like you're like tucking that tailbone under and lifting the front of your 2 hip bones in the front up toward the ceiling. Like make them start to look like flashlights that point up to the ceiling instead of down toward the floor. And go back, do it again, pelvic tilt, tuck your tailbone under, feel your sit bones squeeze towards each other, taking a little bit of the arch out of your back. Yeah, good. Cheryl's doing it standing. That's totally fine if your knees aren't able to be kneeled on like that. So just see, how is it between this whole mechanism of this hip? Do you have one side where it doesn't do it as easily, or do both sides feel like, no, my sit bones are coming in, my tailbone can go under, my quads can lengthen, my pelvic floor can activate? What's happening for you? Good. Okay, then come into a kneeling groin stretch, bringing your right leg forward, opening up that hip, shoulders relaxing down your back. As soon as we come into these split stance, the pelvic floor is doing something different on one side than the other. That changes what's happening all in the hip. Draw that leg forward, relax your shoulder blades all the way down your back, relax your belly here. Just let the hip split start to happen. That back leg going back behind you, this front hip going into deep flexion. And a little bit of that same thing has to happen here. So you should have the ability to both tuck your tailbone and stick your tailbone out in this position. See if you can just move it around a little bit. Open that space, like a one side pelvic tilt. And then see if you can get a little farther with that action. And then switch. So come into your kneeling groin stretch. If you have one side that's much tighter than the other, you'll notice this being different too. Shoulder blades relax down and back away from your ears. Relax your belly. And then explore here. Can you do that pelvic tilt even here with one hip in extension and one hip in flexion? Lift your tailbone, scoop your tailbone down, and see how that has to move in the hip, between the hip and the pelvis. And then press back. Both feet on the floor. Tie that back into your shoulders. Cats and dogs once more. That feels more smooth. Come up into standing and come into a spread foot forward bend. So take your feet wide. You can grab your block if you like and just bend over. Thighs tight and just allow that bend to happen. Now, if you notice for you in your body that just this makes your back want to go into a really rounded position, then bend your knees a little bit and let your hips do more of that work. If you can get pretty far and your hamstrings are fairly flexible, go ahead and press your legs towards straight and work more on this connection between the hip and the pelvis and the rest of your body. Bending over, letting your body just come into the middle. So both hips around the hip and where the pelvis meet, let that go into flexion. Working your spine a little straighter and breathing. Lifting your kneecaps, tightening your thighs. Continuing to try to put a little more arch into your back. Even if you come out a little forward, see if you can put more arch in your back there. All right, and then bend your knees so that you can be a little fluid here. And take your left arm and just lift it up to the sky and bring it back down. Make some wavy shapes. You can let your body make any kind of shape that it wants to. Just let it find the rotators in your back. You can wiggle your hips around a little bit. Be a little more fluid. Feel the inside leg muscles and the outside leg muscles, and then switch sides. And then take that other side and make it a shape reaching to the sky. Once again, feeling your rotators in your back. And then back to square, press your legs more straight, bend over one more time. So again, knees could be bent here if you're just trying to find the muscles in the front of your hips and trying to get a little arch in your back to happen. If that's easily happening, then press your legs all the way to straight and tighten the front of your thighs and connect the front space. And breathe. Bring your block over to your left foot and reach that right arm all the way away from you. Hip, rib, arm, shoulder, all working. And other side. Back to the middle. And then go over to one side, just to the place where your body will let you, and over to the other side. And that might be low all the way down to the ground or up a little higher. Just work between those two legs. Tell your body these are ranges of motion that we want to continue to have access to. Whatever pain-free space that is for you. Don't go into pain. If there's something that is wanting to limit that action, then please listen. But as long as it's okay, move into those bigger, fuller ranges. Nice. And then come onto your back. Place the bottom of your feet together and allow your knees to drop out to the side in a frog. And then check in with your body. Does femur-driven lumbar extension feel okay to you when you're on your back and your body's being supported by the floor? The answer might be yes or no. If it's no, please bring your legs back in and just keep your feet on the floor, or even pull your legs up into a table position. That would flatten your back a little more. If it's okay to be in this frog, then bring your arms out to the side. Squeeze your shoulder blades underneath your back in toward your spine and feel your upper arm bones move into the shoulders, shoulders into the middle back. Get them away from up around your ears. So let those traps, the upper trap, not be the dominant muscle here. As the shoulder comes in toward your spine, let those rhomboids and lower and mid traps be what works, and then relax them back out. Squeeze them in again, and then release. Squeeze, release. And then interlace your fingers. Let's bring your legs in just to hook line and pull your arms over your head to the floor, all the way up, reach way away from you, and then bring them back up and all the way over. Let's do that 20 times. Okay, now that we have our upper back a little more open, then come onto your hands and knees. Place your elbows down on the floor and come up into a downward dog on your elbows. So that's a lot of extension through your upper back. You could use your block if you want to add a little more stability by placing your hands around your block and setting it on the floor. And then tuck your toes under. And you're working your heart down toward the mat and your hips up over your shoulders. Hips up over your shoulders. Yeah, so.
Like a smaller V. Get our hips closer.
So you,
Like moving your feet forward.
forward, yep. So pull your heart back And then make your bum go higher up in the air so that eventually your hips are walking themselves up over your shoulders. Letty, look at mine. Up over your shoulders.
Real down dog.
Real down dog. So finding some of those muscles in your middle back area. Just feel, does it feel the same between the hip and the shoulders? Do you have one side that talks differently than the other? Just notice where you're at. Come on down and take a little break. Awesome. Now let's go out into our plank. So more outstretched, still on your elbows. Coming out into your push-up position, holding that stability. Find your breath. Let's take 3 breaths. We worked those thigh muscles in the beginning. Feel your thigh muscles engage here. And then if you feel comfortable with it, make your body stiff like a board, roll up onto one side so that you're on your elbow in a side plank, holding that. And we'll take 3 breaths here also. And then back to straight, stiff like a board, and up to that other side. 3 breaths there. Holding it, feeling that shoulder have to stabilize for you. Stabilization between the hip and the shoulder and the spine. Back to straight, and then come on down. Once more, cats and dogs. Your body should be warming up, moving more easily now. And then come into a seated floor twist. Now this is one, once again, good for most people, with occasional few people that this continues to delaminate some of the disc space in the back. So check in with your body. Does it feel okay to you? Cross one ankle over the other knee. Your choice to pull that bottom leg around and then reset both butt cheeks down on the floor. If you want to leave that bottom leg out, that's fine too. Then sit tall and twist. You can take any version of this that feels good to you, grabbing that other toe, helping to pull you around, bringing this back arm even more underneath you, reaching. Either way, sit into your hips, more root to rise. Untwist. Switch. Sitting both hips down into the floor and find your rotation. Both hips rooted, twist slightly through the low back, mostly through between the space between the rib cage and the upper back. And finally your head and neck. Ears over shoulders, over hips. Letting that spinal column be in its good position so it can rotate. Gently untwist. And then extend both legs out straight on the floor. Pull your toes back, keep your thighs tight. Femur rotations out and in. Moving into that hip, leg bone into the hip socket, hips stable, shoulders open. You could even try to walk your hands behind you so that they touch even more, so that you're in big thoracic extension.
I have a question about thoracic extension.
Yeah.
Is it just our shoulder blades moving us, or does? the
Technically, your
shoulder-
thoracic back, so your vertebrae in your upper back.
Your vertebrae do move there,
Mhm.
they do, they're not just straight up and down.
No. They should be slightly rounded, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Slightly.
That's right.
We want a slightly round thoracic back. Okay, pull your legs into a cobbler position. Sit up tall, try to put an arch in your back even here. And then bring your arms up. Just feel, so pretty short lever between the pelvis and the shoulder right now. So if you've got an imbalance like I do, a little scoliosis or something, you may really feel it here. And then reach one arm up, bring it down, and the other arm up, down. Just see if we can even anything out between that side of the hip, either opposite hip and opposite shoulder, or same side.
I read somewhere about the thoracic back that 70% of our twisting should happen in there.
Yes. Yeah, the lumbar vertebrae should only move 3 or 4 degrees. It's not very much, which basically means if you can see it when someone's walking, that they're twisting in their low back, it's too much. Kathy, we've never seen your lower body twist.
I don't think, that's the problem.
Bring your legs back in.
Thoracic back is.
Once more, onto your hands and knees. Tie it all together. Cats and dogs into a downward facing dog. Full downward dog. Knees bent. If it's hard for you to get your back just into that full extension, if your back, if you can create that curve at the low back and through your mid and upper back, you could be a little bit of a container, then work your legs more straight. You decide where you are with this one. You can wiggle and add some movement to it. Drop one foot, then the other. Pull the armpits down toward the floor on the side of your body. Keep letting that top all the way up into your hips. And then walk it in. Good, we did that quadruped rocking, so I want to have you do a few squats and feel that. So take your legs wide, you can even turn your feet slightly out. Eventually we want the feet to be straight when you squat, but keep that little bit of an arch in your low back as you sink down into your squat, and just feel where's the place where your wink wants to happen. How far can you get down before your hips start to want to make your pelvis turn down toward the floor? And just see if you can get a little bit more play in that space. That makes it easier to keep your upper body upright as you go down. You would get lower in your squat in a more correct position. Excellent. All right, come into your lying down position, lying down or seated for meditation. And you can decide, we'll see, we have a break from the music in the other room. We'll see how that'll be for a minute.
Yeah, into like a shavasana position or seated. Wherever you are, start with the sensation of your body on the floor. And allow your body to just fill that space. So expand your awareness outward from your body so your body is just in that space of awareness. And then feel breath move into your body or in the space of awareness also. Where does the breath move when the body is just sensation? Notice heartbeat. And allow your mind to quiet. Just drop back. Not to worry if thoughts arise. You can just simply watch them without engaging with them or being taken into the habit of following into the thought and having the thought become your identity. Just let it flow. Notice the sensation. Imagine the cells of your body vibrating. And let each of the frequencies with which the cells and the organs of your body vibrate. And if any repair needs to happen, let that just happen easily. Use the next 2 minutes simply as a reset, coming back to your true nature. Feel breath, notice sensation, stay right here. Feel your beingness and your body.
know that when you get to the space that is truly your being, it's not a temporary state. It's a solid state. It's always there. It always has been. Take one more full deep breath and then slowly begin to surface. Thank you to everybody who came to class both in person and on Zoom today. You rock. We'll keep working out the little kinks, but hopefully that was okay.
That's so much better than doing it.
It is.
We need each other, don't we?
Thank you, Kyra.
You're welcome.
Our shot.